What a day. What a day. What a day. 2 disclaimers. Disclaimer number 1, there will be a 30 to 60 second pause in the video. It's intentional. You can fast forward past it if you choose. However, it's intentional. So I'm just letting you know that it's coming. Disclaimer number 2, I'm going to take my time with this one because y'all don't even know. Okay? And that's all I got to say about it. So, Passion, care to tell us why the episode is going up on Wednesday night and not on Tuesday? Sure. So I had a whole plan to do a year in review episode as my What I'm Thankful For episode. And then I felt compelled to finish the episode on silence. So I had a base in place because I started writing this episode months ago, but I was meeting with roadblocks. No problem, because I'm determined, right? So despite the seemingly never-ending parade of people through my house for this gas, more on that in a moment, I sit down to finish writing. I'm making progress. Have to go to work, so I pack up my things and I get to getting. I'm at my desk preparing to go over what I've written and make my final edits. It's gone. I search and search and search. It's gone. Apparently, when I decided to take advantage of the work offline feature, there was an in-between step that I didn't know about. So missing that step cost me hours of work and thought. So I did what I do when adversity comes and slaps me in the face hard. I shut down to keep myself from bursting into tears amongst people who wouldn't have understood my grief or wouldn't have cared. And then I watched the negative committee in my head begin to assemble to give their respective speeches on how I failed myself and how I continue to fail myself. On my way home, self is giving me a pep talk about pushing through and getting it done. I walk in the door and I'm on the border of cry like a baby and shake my head and pick up the pieces, whichever which way I can. I see a missed call from my goddaughter and she keeps me from crying even though she gave me her full permission to cry as much as I wanted to. So while when composing this, it was way later than I was okay with. While my eyes were burning me, my shoulders were on fire, and my feelings were hurt, I sat down to compose what I can only assume was the episode that you were always supposed to get. Maybe that's why I couldn't get my thoughts to flow for the first one. I don't know, but it is well. I still didn't finish writing it when I sat down last night, but even though I laid down for some much needed sleep and caught a nap instead, I didn't give up on us. So here we are. I think this is a great place for affirmation and intention setting. You know, you can repeat after me or you can do your own affirmations. I am a survivor. I am an overcomer. I am a winner. I am a victor. I am unthwarted. I am undeterred. I am unshakable. I am unbreakable. I am fully capable. I am fearless. I am bold. I am prepared for the challenge. I am equipped for the challenge. I can be trusted to see it through. I understand that it is a process. I process through the stages of process and welcome each level. I acknowledge that change is part of the process. I accept that tears and disappointment may be part of the process as well, but they are not the end of the line. I am aware in this moment. I am present in this moment. I am ready. Ashe, ashe, ashe. So the gas. So did I tell you that the fire department and Con Edison had to come back? Well, they did. The gas was still present, but not leaking from anywhere visible in my house. So Con Ed left it alone. So when I complained to management about it again, when I pushed back, like we talked about in the previous episode, there were whisperings and implications that it was in my head and refusals to come and look again. This is why people are actually in my house. Then they went to the apartment downstairs and found an extreme gas leak in her house. So I guess the imaginings in my mind imagined the leak they found in her house too. And in all of these occurrences, there were moments of silence. And in these moments, there was self-reflection and review. There were opportunities to applaud myself and other places for less than gentle rebuke. There was this episode insisting upon being completed and shared. So here are my musings. Silence speaks volumes. Did you know that? Do you agree with that? Most of us are familiar with the phrase, silence is golden, but a lot of folks have never taken the time to peel back the layers of what that means. Now, y'all know I love a good dictionary break and sharing definitions, and we're going to take one later. But for now, I want us to take a moment and experience it while we think it through. Like, actually. Like, I'm going to be still for the next 60 seconds and let you turn over in your mind what golden in this instance really means. "60 seconds feels long when you're listening and not hearing anything. Isn't that something? Silence can make you so uncomfortable. It can make you impatient. It can make you feel there are clouds in your ears. It has the power to shift your mood. It has the power to make you want to alter or exit your environment. Silence allows you to think deeply and without interruption. It allows you to focus and concentrate. It allows you to be fully aware of yourself in your surroundings and yourself and your surroundings. Don't let that one get by you. Silence allows you to hear what you've tuned out as white noise. Silence is where memories really shine because they have a real opportunity to come to the surface unobstructed and replay. Silence is where you hone in on how to read energy and body language. Nonverbal communication is its own amazing tool because so many think they have it figured out. They regurgitate what they heard some so-called experts say and convince themselves that they too are now experts. So silence is powerful. It can make you feel empowered or disempowered. It can make you feel clearer. And while there's no sound in silence, especially in a space where there's no ambience, it can be as deafening as blasting music and make your ears ring same way. Silence is a force. So why say silence is golden? Because silence has unmatched value. Everybody needs it at some point for some reason, but not everybody can get access to it. And there are those who get it or have it and don't know what to do with it or how to appreciate it. So they squander it until they long for it like gold. Okay, but how does it speak volumes? Because silence can convey so many different emotions without a word ever being said. And why would that be important? Because entirely too many people are flying on autopilot right now. Silence and unresponsiveness forces them to think. I remember a girlfriend saying she wanted to go out. So I found an event and I sent her the link. Now within the link, all of the 5 W's were listed. I knew she opened the link because she knew what the event was and thought it looked like something she wanted to attend. Little while later, she sends me a text and asks me, what time does it start? And that question was met with silence. Why? If you recall, I stated that the 5 W's were contained within the link. Why then would you need to ask me what time if when is one of the 5 W's? And I know somebody's saying, Passion, you mad petty. You should have just answered the question. Yeah, nah. Know your audience. I met her question with silence because she already had the answer. Actually, she had 2 answers. In the time it took her to text me and ask me what time it was starting, she could have taken significantly less time and opened the link back up, since the time and date was the first thing you saw upon clicking it. The other answer: don't ask me questions you already have the answer to because you think your desire to be lazy matters to me. If I wasn't here, you'd have to do it on your own. When I'm not here, you'll have to do it on your own. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Anyway, as I was thinking on this subject, a verse from Simon and Garfunkel's Sound of Silence came to mind, specifically the 3rd verse. People talking without speaking. People hearing without listening. Now, if you search the meaning of the song, you'll find explanations from a struggle between spiritual and material to a song of resistance. If you dig deeper, you'll find that Paul Simon, who actually authored the song, basically said that he was in his bag when he wrote it. He's quoted as saying, "It's not a sophisticated thought, but a thought that I gathered from some college reading material. It wasn't something that I was experiencing at some deep, profound level. Nobody's listening to me. Nobody's listening to anyone. It was a post-adolescent angst, but it had some level of truth to it, and it resonated with millions of people." I gotta take this earring off. You can call me one of millions. People hear without listening so readily. And first of all, I'm sure we've discussed this before, but it bears repeating that hearing and listening are not the same. Hearing is inactive and unintentional. I hear these sirens soundtracking my creative experience, but I'm not intentionally or actively listening to their tones or the directions they may be hailing from or headed to. You see the difference? And this goes back to what I was saying about people flying on autopilot. People are actively responding to things they aren't actually listening to. I remember when I was working in the garage department and a resident came in to get her car. I complimented something, either her dress or her hair, I don't know what. But she was on autopilot. So while she heard me say something, she wasn't actually listening to what that something was. And we were engaged in conversation. So her response to the compliment was something like, "Okay, you too," or something off the wall and unbefitting. When she came back down to exit, she was shaking her head and she thanked me for the compliment. She apologized and acknowledged that she was on autopilot. In the silence, she had an opportunity to review what was actually said versus how she'd responded. She had an opportunity to self-reflect on how not attentive she was being to what was happening around her. I could have been telling her something to save her life, and she would have missed it because she was preoccupied. And let's take a quick pause right here to ensure that we're all on the same page of understanding that silence and quiet, although synonymous, are not always interchangeable. According to differencebetween.info, quiet is often associated with a certain limit of noise in an environment. When the word quiet is mentioned, it doesn't mean the complete absence of sound, but a reduction in it. Contrastingly, the word silent doesn't mean a decline in the noise produced. It in fact refers to the total absence of sound in the immediate surroundings. When a person uses the word silent, he or she implies that the noise emanating from someone or something is proving to be a major hindrance, which is why the person wants it to end completely. This understanding is also the premise of why we use proverbs such as pin drop silence or silence is golden, etc. Notice that I said in the silence and not when it was more quiet, because even though the garage is typically noisy, it wasn't. Her distractions were internal and not environmental. And those distractions could have ranged from anything thinking about what she left upstairs to thinking about someone who wouldn't be there when she got back, and the gravity of that. I don't know. I do know that a lot of our distractions are self-imposed because we fear, we revile, we eschew the silence. And that's because we don't want to deal with ourselves. Okay, now she ready. We don't want to experience ourselves as others experience us, because a lot of us would have a real reason to dislike ourselves at that point if we weren't willing to do the corrective work. And the majority of us aren't willing. We'd much rather be raggedy and let everyone else figure out how to navigate our ridiculousness than stop being ridiculous and admit just how low our respective emotional IQs are. The silence doesn't allow for too much play pretend, but it does allow for communion. The silence is where the ancestors speak to us. The silence is where source speaks to us. Prayer is the call and meditation is the response. Prayer is where we speak to source, offer gratitude, and make requests. Gratitude. Thank you for this food from your bounty. The request. Use it to the nourishment of my mind, body, and spirit. The direction, the authorization, the permission that so many of us are praying for in our more involved prayer and supplication is delivered during meditation, where we're actively inactive. The stillness, the silence. A lot of folks waiting to hear from source can't hear anything yet because they love the noise more than they want the answer. Ooh, you be talking spicy. Also, there are a whole lot of us who would be vexed if we sat in the silence waiting to hear a word, and that word was, you already know what to do. But isn't that always the truth? Like, even if all you know to do is ask someone else, isn't that still knowing and acting on what you know? It's not, until you realize it is. Passion is the original title of this episode was Self-Check. I can only guess where I was initially going with this as I actually started writing it in July. But right now, in this final 5 weeks of 2021, if you haven't done a real self-evaluation, this is a great time to start so you can walk into 2022 being and doing different and better than ever before. And if it can't be better than ever, it can still be some kind of improvement. I encourage you to embrace the silence. Embrace what it has to offer. The silence for me often shows up as you knew better then, so do better next time so it doesn't happen again. And as of late, the silence has shown up as revelation. A lot of the criticisms that I received in my childhood and early adulthood, as much as I resented them and the people who offered them, some of those criticisms were accurate descriptions. They weren't favorable or complimentary, and they may have hurt my feelings, but they weren't lies or attacks on my character. At least not all of them. And every time I heard them, especially the ones that were resounded by different people in different places who didn't know each other, that was a new opportunity to take corrective action so I wouldn't still be plagued by the same issues in my big age. I'm willing to share these truths about me publicly so you can do the work privately. Is this your story too? Because if it is, it's not too late to start the work. Seek the silence. Fun fact. Several years ago, the silence was where I chose life over suicide. I chose between whether it was worth it to fight and find my way out of what I was going through, or end it and not have to fight anymore. And as I share that with you, here's an advisory. The devil will show up in the silence the same way the truth does. As a matter of fact, the devil will probably show up before the truth does. Talk about it. Because the silence is where you learn and hone discerning. The devil is the distraction. The devil is your resistance to the fight, trying to out or overtalk the victory of survival. If you don't want to live, the devil will show up with suggestions on how to die and valid justifications for why. And the victory will stand somewhere out of sight, waiting to be seen. I am speaking from experience. You may have to look for your personal victory, meaning that while you're weathering the storm, You'll have to decide what victory is to you. What does it look like to you? Is it just not ending it? Is it proving that you're worth it or you can do it? Because everyone's victory doesn't look the same, but everyone has had to weather a storm. The silence is a good place to think about the people closest to you that have weathered similar storms or the same storm and reflect on how many made it out. Because even if there was only one that made it out, that means you can too. So you remember that when the devil pulls up. Remember that no matter with how many different people you've had intimate encounter, and we're talking about couple relationships here, no matter if each partner was in the wrong and how wrong they all may have been, you are still the common denominator. Say it again. You are still the common denominator. Every intimate partner has cheated while you made a perfect home. Well, what were you tolerating that you shouldn't have? What are you doing that cheaters are attracted to you? And what new boundaries will you set for your upcoming relationships? Every job you've worked at, they overworked you and underpaid you, then try to give you the workload of a whole other position while still only paying you for the job you actually signed up for? How many jobs were you willing to walk away from on the spot? And I ask this knowing that I just did a message to the millennials type of PSA on the gram about quitting your job or crazy without first consulting or at least advising or forewarning the person who will now be required to be financially responsible for you. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the conviction that Michael Mai and some other powerful women that I know, I'm talking about the conviction that they have where they'll start a job on Tuesday and quit on Friday because of all the things I'll agree to do, Mr. Supervisor, work as two people but get paid as one, tain't on the list, sir. Surely you just be disrespected for a couple dollars is not a go either. In the silence is where you'll determine whether or not you're bold enough to maneuver through what my mother refers to as lean times. In the silence, you'll get the blueprint for what's to come. It may be you're going to have to give up your home, put your stuff in storage, and rent a room for 6 months. Dollar Tree ramen may be part of that blueprint too. But if you trust the architect, say that, you'll follow the blueprint even when it's scary as hell. Y'all, these are my in the silence conversations and realizations. When you see me post with a smile, you don't know that so many times there's still snot on the back of my hand from the boo-hooing I'm still doing as I create the captions. In the silence, I realize that while I may be justified to respond certain ways, bigger than it not being called for, my responses may be out of date.
Come on, introspection.
I was talking to someone who was asking me questions, but without them giving a preface as to why those questions were being asked, I was already on the defense and ready to dead the conversation. Now, this person and I have a history where their intentions may be good in their heart, but they come out all jacked up and help may be offered or even given. But you better believe they'll kick you the whole time you're down and every time you try to stand. Based on this history, I shy away from involving them in anything that's going to result in this human kickball session. But we've had conversation about their intentions versus their results. And in the silence, they had time to see how it all impacted me and work on a different approach. But I didn't even consider what work they've been doing. The silence showed me that I could be a little less guarded and a little less defensive because the conversation didn't fall on deaf ears and work had been done. The silence reminded me to give grace. Beloveds, I don't want to talk your heads off. I just want you to recognize the silence as the asset that it is. If it's hard to come by, recognize that it's a commodity that should be sought out with vigor and zeal. If it's always available, then consider yourself privileged and invested. Use it wisely. Protect it like you would gold. Next week will be the last episode of the season, and I'm experiencing all of the nerve responses simultaneously. I'll still be providing you content, but it won't be 4 episodes. Next season, I'm going to try some new things. First thing will be guests. How that's going to work in a PSA structure, you leave that to me. I think we've had a successful run for season 1, so I know season 2 is going to be equally as dope, if not better. before I sign off, I hope whatever you do Thursday, you spend some real time in reflection and don't just tell people what you're thankful for, but operate in real gratitude. I hope that for those of you who feel like the day is an affront to your culture or lineage, that you know that there are those of us who honor your pain and send love and comfort your way. For those who are big on these end of year family gatherings, who are missing family members, I pray that you find comfort and solace. For those who don't have family or don't have family that they can get to celebrate with, I pray that there's an open door for you and a seat at a table filled with friends to welcome you. For those of us that are going to work, may everyone stay inside that doesn't know how to act so our day can be peaceful. And for those who are looking for that pre-Black Friday turnout, may your stores be full and your staff be plenty. Go forth, be great, be filled with bliss, be armed and empowered with knowledge. Check yourself, honor the silence, heed what's revealed in the silence. In all things, be passionate. Enjoy your Thursday. Later. I'll see you next week.